I'm Coach Seb, and this is Running New Mexico. Joining me today, I have AJ Beach. He is a Sandia Prep graduate, UNM graduate, and is an athlete performance therapist. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you. So, my first question is, how did you get into running?
Well, I never really wanted to run. Um, yeah, I started when I was 5 years old with Albuquerque Track Club, and the reason why we joined ATC was because my parents went to the wrong meeting. They were supposed to go to AAT, the Albuquerque Athletic Track Club or whatever, and so. And kind of the way it happened is my brother Curtis, who I think he's been on your podcast, or he's
He has.
so Curtis was doing baseball and he wouldn't stop running around the bases. So they put him in track, and then I had to follow in his footsteps. So I kind of did it reluctantly because my parents just put me in it. So, but yeah, so I started with ATC, and then I didn't really develop a passion for running until I would say my junior year of high school. But yeah, I did everything from turbo jav to race walk to high jump, and eventually into the 800 and the 1500.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting, when you get into it because of your family. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always because, like you said, it wasn't a passion of yours until you grew up a little bit more. And so you're kind of doing this thing almost out of obligation, which can make it feel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely like that. At one point, they had to um, like convince me that they were going to buy me an Xbox so I would run. So yeah, I was really like, but it was really good because a lot of my friends in high school were kind of doing, they were more into partying or hanging out or doing stuff. And I always had a cross country meet, and I always had a track meet. So I always had to go to bed early. So it kind of kept me out of trouble also.
Yeah. Yeah. Sports in general are great for that. Um, what what shifted your junior year where you said that's kind of where you found your love for it? Like what made that shift for you where you were like, I think I do like this?
Well, I think, like when I was in high school, I made it to state in the high jump in my eighth grade and ninth grade year. Uh, and then when I was working with Stacy Price in Sandia Prep, he put me in the 800, and my first 800 ever, I ran 205. And so it was kind of a good natural start. And then I think that, I had a girlfriend that year, and she uh, kind of messed me up. So I didn't perform very well at state. And I finished, I think, in eighth. I think I finished last in my sophomore year. And I think just for whatever reason, my junior year, I was motivated. I had a good group of friends. I was doing well in school. And um, yeah, for whatever reason, I was just a lot more motivated. I can't really remember why, but um, my junior year, I finished second in the 800 at state. And I remember the guy who beat me, he got me in the last like 80 meters. And I just said, I'm going to win next year. And so my senior year, I won four state titles. And so, yeah, I kind of shifted a lot in my
Yeah,
mindset. I just got more and more motivated.
that's fantastic. It's having some success can really help change your attitude. Like, oh, I'm good at this.
Totally, totally.
Oh, but man, I have seen many a high school kid, girl, boy, whatever, that they have a breakup, and man, it can mess up a season.
Yeah, yeah. I remember going to the Albuquerque Academy meet, which is always such a huge meet if you're a high school
Right.
kid. And I just couldn't even run. Like I was so emotionally disrupt. And I remember just like having this talk with Coach Price, and he said, he's like, guys usually get the short end of the stick. And so, and then, I don't know, for whatever reason, that made sense to me. And I just didn't run that day, but I'm happy that I really turned it around, and I'm happy that running really became my driving force for going to the University of New Mexico and running for Coach Franklin, and then that led on later on to doing a lot of the therapy work that I do with athletes now. So, some of those moments, even though you're at your lowest point, sometimes they're so fundamental to leading you into where you want to go. And running's definitely been an interesting thing in my life, and a lot of it's taught me how to just be with myself, and a lot of it brought me community, and it's just that daily practice of going out there every day and warming up and taking care of your body and chasing a dream. And it was a really good time in my life, I would say,
Yeah,
and I was really striving for it.
that's great. I want to go back a little bit, when you talked about kind of making that shift and for whatever reason it became kind of your own thing. Was that when you kind of first started thinking like obviously you'd seen your brother go off to college and not only do it but do it very well.
Yeah.
But when you made that shift, was that when you started thinking like, oh, I could do this too?
I don't know. I always felt Curtis was on his own journey, and I, I loved running with him. I don't know, running for us wasn't really about running. It was about kind of being brothers in some way. So I was very proud of his ability, and I was very, like I really appreciate all the stuff that he's done because now I have the perspective to understand it. But growing up, I didn't really care that much about it. you know, I was kind of just like, okay, Curtis is like pole vaulting in the house every day and throwing the javelin in the backyard and wakes up at 5 in the morning to go to the gym. And like he was just in his own world. And so it wasn't until college where we really became close. But I don't know. I think my desire to do well, I really liked pushing my body to the absolute limit. Like I really liked working really, really hard and just having that like intensity of like, I'm going to go to state and I'm going to like win, And um, I remember in the state final of the mile, it was 90 degrees out. Everyone went out in 62 seconds. And I was maybe fifth with a lap to go. And I knew I was going to win the race. Like I mean, that feeling of just like being so confident and I can't say that I was doing the best training or I had the best strategy, but I just had such passion for the act of wanting to do my best. And yeah, I don't know, that shifted at some point in my life into other things, but um, it was it was just an intrinsic thing that was in me, and it just felt really good to follow.
That's great. I mean, it's so awesome. Like you were, like you said, I mean, you got into this because of your family, because of Curtis, and to be able to just kind of hold it on to your own, like, oh, that's just what he does, and to find your own
Yeah,
path. That's great. I think that can be hard for a lot of kids to be able to do that without that like almost feeling like, well, I got to live up to that, or I'm competing against that, or
yeah.
or whatever. So that's
No,
really
I think other people had that thought about me. I think when I went to the University of New Mexico, I think they thought, oh, AJ is going to be really talented and he's going to have all this. And that definitely wasn't the case. But I was like the worst athlete. But for me, what was good with Curtis is he brought me an enormous amount of community and resources. And I was exposed to the world's most elite coaches and therapists in the world. And um, all I had to do is just, like hang out with him, and which was fun, and I would say the other advantage is I always got Curtis's clothes. So like I've never bought a pair of clothes in my life, like a few times, but like I always like take whatever clothes he would get from Nike or from Duke or from. So I always had a fresh pair of clothes that I was using,
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so I mean that's kind of the extent of the competition between us. So yeah, but yeah, it's been really I feel bad because I gained a lot of skills in manual therapy and helping athletes and treating athletes from more of a medical point of view. And I just feel like I showed up a little too late in Curtis's career for that. So for me, that's kind of the one regret is I'm like, oh, I wish I knew this a little bit earlier. So
Well, what made you, I guess, want to get into that realm, and and pursue that type of career, I guess.
well, I think, it's always a bunch of things. I would say that as it relates to running, I've always been a very curious and open person, and I've just seen everything in a very general way, and just always looking for the deep interactions of how things work together. And I think that coaching is like that. When you're a coach, you have to look at how the workouts are designed. You have to look at the personality. You have to look at the food. You have to look at their family. You have to see their development. So coaches are people who wear a lot of different hats. And being a really good athlete performance therapist, you have to do the same thing. So it kind of started a little bit more with the coaching side as I got into the profession, but the real driver for me was when I went to Africa when I was 16.
Oh,
And when I was in Africa and I was in Ghana, and everyone said, "Oh, you'll realize how great your life is in the US, all the stuff you have and all these things." And when I went there, I had the total opposite reaction. I felt like I was missing so much. And so I just felt like, what is that feeling, what's that missing feeling inside of me? And a lot of it just had to do with community and people and really deep interaction. And so I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, what can I do that'll allow me to integrate myself into community? And it just seemed like doing physical therapy or some type of chiropractic work or some type of thing with people's bodies was the most direct way of gaining access to a certain type of communication and a sense of belonging that I felt like was missing from a cultural point of view. And and so running provided an amazing framework for that because people are always injured and they're always hurting themselves, and
right.
there's a lot of work that athletes need. So I felt like when I was at the University of New Mexico, there was like a lot of my friends were injured and in the training room, and I just had such a deep desire to want to help them. And so that's kind of when I realized that I didn't really care so much about my performance as much as the performance of other people. And I wanted to belong in sport in a different way, but it took a while for me to really come into that perspective. It kind of started with these small feelings first, like, oh, I'm missing something. I want to be with people and I want to have that interaction. And then it became, oh, I want to have the ability to like help these people. And then after that ability, it was like just a matter of watching other practitioners and seeing the way other people do things to gain the technical ability of doing it. And so, and then fortunately, I had Curtis in my life, and he was around a lot of Olympians, high level coaches. And so, it kind of started in that way. So, and being a coach and being a therapist, you always have to be a problem solver. So it really filled that sense of curiosity that I had inside of me, and just wanting to figure it out. Like it's kind of funny, that desire that I had in the 800 and that desire that I had running, it really shifted into like, okay, how do I just gain the skills to know how to help someone in the best way possible? And I think that's kind of where that energy eventually shifted into. And so, yeah, it took a while though.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, and when you're getting good at something and you go that level of college, that expectation of like, I'm going to continue to grow, I'm going to continue to get better, and
Yeah,
it's hard to make that shift when you have to. I think
yeah,
for lots of different levels, even the people who do go pro, like eventually they've got to make that shift into other areas, and that can be a difficult thing to do when this has been what you've done for, years.
yeah. I mean, and I really had to deal with that a lot my freshman year in college. I remember I was in a class and we had to write a goodbye letter to someone. And at that time, I was thinking of quitting track because
Oh,
I had an injury and I wasn't getting better, and I wasn't performing at the level I wanted to, and I remember writing a goodbye letter to track and to running, and I remember I was crying because it was just so emotional, and that's when I remember I was I think after that I started meditating a little bit because at that time I was doing some yoga. And I remember I was trying to be so silent in my brain, and all I could think of was one person. And the person I was thinking of was Shakri, the El Dorado coach. And I was like, why am I thinking about this guy? Like, why am I thinking about this person? And and then I had this thought, oh well, maybe I'm supposed to think of this person. And I remember I had this crazy feeling in my heart, like something was right. And so I think I wouldn't stop calling him after that. And finally I got a hold of him, and yeah, he decided to meet me and we went for a 20-minute run, and I remember him just saying, like, I told him kind of what happened to me at the university, and he's like, oh, he's like, they did the wrong thing. They did the wrong thing. He's like, AJ, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe you're an amazing athlete. You have to believe and he just wouldn't stop telling me to believe in myself. And, that really changed me a lot. And at the time I had the knee injury, and I saw the doctor, I saw all these different people, and none of it helped. And finally I just, I saw a traditional healer, and she said, oh, your knee has the feeling of doom, like when you feel like there's doom. And so I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. So part of my training with Shakri is I had to run with the high schoolers.
right.
And uh, I remember I'm like, oh, I'm a college athlete. Why am I running with these kids? And I just had so much fun. Like I had so much fun running with the El Dorado high school team. And I remember Jessie Hicks running with her. And this girl was like, I think she was a sophomore, maybe she was a sophomore in high school or junior year. And she was beating me like bad. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, Shakri really gave me a lot in terms of kind of that motivation and really building up my confidence. And, that was a really big step also. And he really gave me kind of a sense of strength around my mental fortitude. And he was exposed to a lot of elite athletes as well. And so
Right.
at some point I ran into the French, like some French Olympic medalist, and his name was Mayadine McKessie. And he was a three-time Olympic medalist for France. And
Wow.
I remember he was asking for some help with therapy, and at that time, I was starting to learn some of the therapy stuff, and I said, "Oh, okay, I'll help you." And that's kind of how it started. I started with this three-time Olympic medalist from France, and it started with three French athletes, and then it became eight French athletes, and I was trying to run and train, and I was working with Edna Kurgad and Mini Kaladi and at the university. And I was working with all these people who are like winning nationals and the Olympics and all these things. And they were looking for me for help. And I just felt like, like I love running and it's something that's so special in my life, but I'm not going to be a professional athlete. Like it's just not like I'm too busy. I'm helping too many people and I'm not really excited about my own running, but I feel like I can do a lot for like elite level athletes and I feel like I can do a lot for people. And so that was kind of when that shift started for me was okay, like I don't think I'll be the best in terms of as a runner, but I can put my mind and my skill set and that drive that I had in running into another form. And so it was kind of a nice transition for me actually, and I felt like that was really the beginning of my career. Was that running was kind of preparing me for that.
Right.
So
Wow.
yeah,
I want to go back for just a second because if anybody who's listening to this and they don't know Shakri, like
yeah,
I can everything you said, I can hear him saying because he's so energetic, he's so
mhm,
positive. The way that he pushes his athletes, to just believe is just he is,
totally.
one of the best out there at doing that. It is fantastic to watch him.
Oh yeah, I mean, and he really, and it's funny because in the beginning you just copy people. You
Right.
copy the people who taught you things. And I remember being around very high level athletes, and I would just tell them like, "Hey, you're so amazing. You're great. You're," and so many of them were just so surprised because they didn't get that from their coaches, like very high level coaches that take them to the Olympics and get medals, and they didn't even know how to like feel good about themselves. And all I said was just like, wow, like what you're doing is so incredible. Whoa, that like, just being like very excited about little things and
Right.
really building up their confidence and not really joking around about it, like being really like honest and saying like, wow, like what you are doing is is great. And like, you just keep going and that kind of thing. He taught me a lot about that, about being very positive and
Right.
always being very positive, always looking for good things, always you know and so yeah, I mean, he's I I always think about him because I've been with Coach Dan Paff and Jeremy Fisher, and I've gone to a lot of different international competitions, and I just don't see a lot of people like Shocker, like
Yeah.
people who just really love helping people and within their soul, and it's not about, looking at the result the person's going to get or how well they're going to perform at conference or state or districts or, it's not about, Shakri always told me, he said, like, you don't support someone when they're at the top, you always support them when they're at the bottom. And so like I just felt so happy, like um, working with like high school kids and just, and I remember one time I had a high school kid who said like, he's like, I think that I don't want to really work at Taco Bell anymore and I want to go to community college. And a lot of that was inspired because of just saying like, hey, you're a good runner, man. Like you can do this. Like you can, I mean, just like you could really change someone's life. And so that kind of became and I think it's always a good reminder to go back to that place of
Right.
like being positive. And even when I don't know, even when I have a big problem in front of me, or even when I feel stressed out, or even it's like, being positive is so big. And you never know what someone's going through. So, just having that little bit of light can take someone out of some really dark places.
Right. Absolutely. Um, so I want to, talk a little bit about your journey. We've talked a little bit. You helped out my own daughter when she was dealing with
Mm-hmm.
a hip issue, and it had bothered her for a while, and so really appreciative of that. But you kind of talked about some of your journey, and so it's, you talk about like putting your energy into learning stuff, and like you
Yeah.
really learned a lot of different things, and you kind of touched a little bit about talking with, you know, the whole body
Yeah.
of everything. So take us on on your journey of how you got to kind of where you are now as far as, working with body and how it connects with the mind and all that, because I love it.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think I've kind of been talking about it a little bit.
Right.
I think going to Africa was the beginning, and getting my own body fixed, that provided tons of information. I remember, the first practitioner I really started working with was a guy named Jay Young. And Jay's a good friend of Mubarak and Shakri, and he was a Korean marathon runner. And I think he was the national record holder. But I remember him just putting me in front of a mirror and just saying, like, okay, does your body look balanced? And I was like all crooked and all, and and he would just get on a chair and get on the table and walk on my back and crack my neck, and then give me this crazy massage stuff, and he'd really just try to understand my problem. And then at the end of the session, he would make me pancakes and stuff, and that was kind of like, that was kind of my intro. And then I started hanging out with people like Bo Hightower, who's a chiropractor who works with a lot of MMA fighters, and then I started and then with Curtis, I was exposed to Dan Paff and a lot of very high level therapists at Altus, the
All
kind of a
right.
world class training center. And at Altus, they have massage therapists and chiropractors and acupuncturists and all sorts of different people. And but I just felt like, like I'm not finding the thing that's really calling my spirit yet. Like I haven't found the technique or the style of treatment that I want to do. And so finally, one day, this guy shows up to the track, and he was this guy from Australia and slash Cambodia. And I remember him just treating this huge discus thrower on the ground. And he was doing all these like very gentle but precise techniques, and he was integrating it with movement. And he was just so like soft and supple and artistic. And I just had the sensation that it was like light shining through a window. I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I have no idea what that's called, but that's it.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like he had such a beautiful perspective of treating the body. So that guy's name was Melvin Tan. And so I just wouldn't stop following that guy around like a puppy. So like I would, he lived in California, so I would bring him athletes and I would go visit him. And I just bothered him so much until he gave me the information I wanted. And I would watch his therapy sessions. I would take pictures. I would write notes. I would look at all the books in his bookshelf, and I would try researching, okay, where it all came from. And so he was an acupuncturist, actually, but
Oh,
the
wow.
style that he practiced was a form of osteopathy. And osteopathy in the United States is like being a medical doctor. So if you see an osteopath, they can give you drugs, they can give you surgery, they can do anything that a normal MD or medical doctor can do.
Wow.
But the osteopaths, their history is very fascinating because it started about 125 years ago. And the idea of the osteopath was that God's creation is perfect, and that by looking at the anatomy and the structure of the body, you could figure out how to fix it from that perspective. And A.T. Still, the one that started the practice, he felt that he was just tired of giving people like opium and alcohol to like fix their problems. He was a medical doctor, so he kind of was a bit of a rebel, and he was into like bone setting, which is like a traditional form of chiropractic, and he was into magnetic healing, which came out of France. And he was really clairvoyant and energetic and studied anatomy and very into the natural world. And so the way he started was that he had a boy who had dysentery, which is like a bad form of diarrhea, and a lot of children died during that time
Right.
of dysentery. And so he saw this child, and he took this child from the mother's arms, and he just wanted to help the kid so badly that he started just evaluating and noticing that there was temperature changes and certain tissue was really restricted. And so he manipulated his spine, and the boy was like, came back to health and was like totally fine and like survived. And
Wow.
then there was like 20 kids in the village, and he just treated all of them like that. So his perspective was like, if you have a medical problem, like I can treat certain parts of the spine, I can treat certain organs, I can treat these things with my hands, and that you could find some type of result out of it in a natural way. And unfortunately, from what I hear from a lot of the osteopaths, is that it became a lot more medicalized over the decades following that.
Hmm.
But in Europe, that that tradition stayed together. So if you go to Europe, an osteopath is more like a chiropractor, PT, massage therapist. They kind of mix all of those skills together.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the history of what I do comes from. I can't say that I'm an osteopath, but I really spent a lot of time learning the philosophy and the approach that those practitioners use,
Right.
and just kind of a hidden thing in the United States. So that's kind of what Melvin was doing, is he was performing a French style of osteopathic treatment. And when I met him, I remember he was watching me work on an athlete, and he's like, AJ, your heart's in a good place, but your technique really sucks. He's like, you got to go learn from like someone. And so that kind of started my journey studying with very like kind of master guru teachers. And so I started studying with a guy named Jean-Pierre Barral and Guy Voyer. And then I kind of found some more esoteric teachers. There's a guy by the name of Etienne Pierceman who inspired me a lot. And so it took a while, but I kind of got the mechanical knowledge of treating the body from like Dan and Guy. And then I kind of got more of the artistic style from Barral, and then kind of the more spiritual side from my teacher Etienne. And that took a while. But and then the real lesson comes from the people you treat, you know. So it's all the athletes I worked with. It's with working with animals and disabled kids, and during COVID, I couldn't really work on people, so I have uh, I had four golden retrievers at the house, so each dog got a day of treatment, and then I had a cat, so he had a treatment, and then if I didn't have them, then I would treat the plants. I would just find something to put my hands on.
Right.
So yeah, and so I that's kind of how a bit of my journey from an educational point of view, at
Right.
least.
Well, and
Yeah,
it is cool, like watching, following your Instagram and seeing you, work on different people and even animals. Like it's so cool to, I've seen you put posts on there working with, athletes, and then, a week later you're working with an elderly person doing something,
yeah,
and like you're, you know, you're you're so broad. There's a lot of people like that might focus in on like just athletics or just elder, in one
yeah.
specific thing. But I love seeing like how you diversify and are trying to kind of again like almost learn it all.
Yeah, and that's part of the philosophy, is being a generalist and appreciating complexity. And I think that I remember Coach Dan saying if he had someone who wanted to learn the 100 meters, he used to take them to watch the hammer throw. And the reason why he did that is because he wanted them to understand biomechanics. And a lot of these things are just principle based, that you once you understand how the sacrum moves, or how this organ functions, or how the physiology and the anatomy and the spirit are connected, then it's for me it's like, why just treat athletes, I remember being around one of my teachers along Croubier. I wanted him to work with my French athletes, and I said, "Oh, Alon, the do you ever work with the Olympic French athletes?" He said, "Oh no, I don't like to work with the athletes. They're so arrogant. It's like I like to help sick people." And that comment really changed me a lot. And I think at the time I was very invested in learning how to belong to running and being at a high level, and more of a feeling of like I want people to notice me. And so I was trying to go to all the track meets. I was trying to work with the elite athletes. And I just realized like I love working with athletes, but I like working with my grandma more.
Yeah.
I like I like working with I like working with children a lot. I like working with anyone. I just became in love with the craft, and I got so lost in the craft. And but for me, sports is more the thing that I do for fun, and it's the thing that it comes out of joy, and I love working with people who wouldn't normally get the work. So like I love working with jumpers. I love working with throwers. I love um, just people who wouldn't be able to find the type of therapy that I do, because the people that do the work that I do, who study with the teachers that I study with, they work with the best of the best, and sometimes they work with high school kids or other people, but I just felt like, I want to be able to provide what I know to everyone. I don't um I have a I have a really big place in my heart for sport, but it's just a part of my heart. It's not everything.
Right.
Um yeah, so it's but I love working with athletes a lot. It's really different. Like I can tell who an Olympic medalist is versus an Olympian versus a professional athlete versus someone who's just trying to make it, like um I've worked with like people like Emmanuel Career who won the Olympic gold medal. I've worked with state champions. I've worked with and it's just amazing to see how the psychological and all the different components that go into like even getting those types of performances.
Right.
So a big part of my job is also navigating someone to that level, if that's what they're capable of. Um, yeah, I can share a story.
Yeah.
Um, I had a girl I worked with, and she had she didn't have a lot of money. She was pretty broke, and Coach Dan Paff recommended her to me. And she did skeleton, which is kind of like bobsled, but you go down head first
Oh,
onto
right.
the
Yeah,
bed.
yeah.
And she had some big issues, and she had, I think, 12 major surgeries. She had concussion. She had a lot of stuff, and
Wow.
she showed up, and like I wanted her to do an A skip, like a normal, just like normal skip, and she's like, "Oh, that's what young people do." And like I was like, "Come on, it's like the most basic." I was so frustrated with her, and but so much of it had to do with this traumatic brain injury that she had suffered with, and I think after the second time working with her, she said, um, like I haven't slept 8 hours in years without taking medication. And that was kind of like one of the results that I got with her was that. And then that
Wow.
event eventually became her being able to do the exercises without feeling worried about it. And then when she kind of left the session, we just, I'm a distance runner. I don't know a lot about
Right.
skeleton. So, but she's like, okay, well, you got to coach me now. And I was like, all right. So I started writing her programs with the help of Coach Dan and Melvin. And the first year I worked with her, she could only get on a bike and work out on the bike. And she would only do her competitions. Like that's the only time she would run. And that first year, she finished, I think, top three in the country. And then the next year, she was able to run, and then she eventually got U.S. champion, and then she made the, I think, world championships. And then she did well enough, and she made the Olympics, and then she finished top six in the Olympics in her event. And
Wow.
a lot of that, she was ready to retire, she was ready to give up. And that, for me, she was the perfect example of someone who like really benefited from the therapy. The intervention really did a good job. And then she had a lot of buy-in and she used me and other people as a team. And she made it work. And it wasn't perfect. There's a lot of things that happen with the federation. There's things that happen in life. There's things that,
Right.
but she was able to manage all of those things super well, and she was able to make it work to the point where she got a medal, or not a medal, but a top six performance.
Right.
She put herself in a position to get a medal, which for me is what I was proud of. You know,
Yeah.
so I love stories like that.
No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. That's amazing. And again, shows your commitment to learning, something else to help someone you're working with. Um, and I just love, that idea of wanting to help everybody. And I love that you still, because I know you still have, spend some time here in Albuquerque, but you
Hmm.
travel all over the place. But I love that when you are here, that you are, you have people that you see and you're still, this person who's sought out, by many different people, as you've talked about, but you're still here, giving back to New Mexico and helping people again, like, my own daughter who she wasn't a state champion or anything. She just wanted to be able to compete to the best of her abilities.
Totally.
And that's
Yeah, I
it's just
mean,
great.
yeah, and for me, the most important thing is that she loves running and she loves sport, and that it's a big part of her life. And for me, I really have to respect that. I don't always think sport's the healthiest thing for people, but I do the treatment for sport and I do the treatment for life. And I really love that, if someone has a dream, then I have to be someone that's able to facilitate that for them. And that was something I learned from Brother O'Connell in Kenya, because I spent quite a bit of time in Kenya with those athletes as well. And yeah, I remember when he was talking about David Rudisha and coaching these very high level Kenyan runners, he just said, like I'm not about helping athletes like get medals. He's like, I just want to facilitate their dreams. And so I kind of stole that. And so I feel like, for me, it's like I have people who've lost their hearing who want to hear again and they want to play
Right.
music. And my goal is like, okay, like, can I get them to the place where they can enjoy music again? And I have some people who, yeah, they just want to do very basic things. And like those little tiny things can really bring so much joy in someone's life. And so, yeah, for me, it doesn't matter if, you know, I, I love working with Olympians and people who have that opportunity, but their treatments is not different than, what I'm getting for your daughter or anyone else, you
Right.
know. Um, yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
Well, that's what I, in this conversation and the conversations we've had before, like that's what I get. That you really enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, totally.
And you're still, you've moved on kind of from this, competing yourself, but you are still helping other people compete and do other things in life. And that the joy that it's bringing you is just it's cool to see. I love seeing people again, whether it's running or something else, like if they're into something and it's bringing them joy, and this is definitely bringing you joy.
Yeah, 100%. And I really, yeah, I feel grateful that I found something that provides so much purpose in my life. And yeah, I kind of feel like, oh, I hit a big, like jackpot, like I kind of figured out something that takes people a long time to figure out in life. And so for me, it's just about, okay, how do I build experience? How do I gain better abilities and skills to do a better job and that kind of thing. So and just build my life out of it. And but then, also appreciating that it's not everything. I
Right.
think I've had the tendency of being like, I've gone days where like the other week, I worked on like the week of the Great Southwest, I worked on 9 athletes that day. I started at 7 a.m. and I finished at 9 or 10 p.m.
Woo.
And it's just to I can do things like that, but it's also like, okay, I need to go and run with my dog Mia, I need to go take care of my body. I need to enjoy other things in life. I need to be with myself also, and kind of find that sense of the beauty of solitude within my own experience. And I think that running gave me that early on. And so I have to remember, like, okay, I still need to run. I still need
Right.
to find, that's why I love like running medicine and Dr. Flegg and those people, because it's like doing a prayer run. Like I
Right.
love that those ideas of the indigenous practices around using the physical body. And so I'm actually really kind of trying to figure that part out now for myself and trying to incorporate that. I would say that was really hard leaving running because I just think of like, okay, I need this competition, I need to get this
Right.
date, I need to get this time, it's just everything, and you just push yourself so hard to that point where, um, you know, it's actually like I'm trying to figure out how to just enjoy it for like itself, the thing within itself, and that's really difficult because I'm
Yes.
always thinking, okay, how do I do my best, how do I do this, and the thing that you need to do for your life in order to be healthy is a very different training program and a very different approach than trying to be ready for a single day at a single
Right.
moment, single time. So yeah, so it's not always easy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's actually what I was just going to ask you. I was going to ask you what your relationship to running is now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I recently I had I mean, I think just going through life and going through different things, and I had, I would say, like quite a bit of stress like on my heart, from working with like my grandma, she has cancer, and working with her, it's really affected me. And I think working with just different people and going through my own spiritual growth is kind of made me vulnerable. And so I had a treatment with one of my teachers, and I had a treatment from a lot of different practitioners, and they just said, "Hey, like your heart is like really tight. It's really like it really needs a lot of work." And so the best thing that I could do for that is aerobic running. Like going on a 45-minute run, going on a 90-minute run. Like those are the best things you can do for your heart. And so my goal now is just to make sure that I do 45 to 90 minutes of aerobic activity a day. And a lot of it's just to make sure I'm healthy.
Right.
I remember Coach Dan at the end of practice, every practice, he would just jog around like at walking pace and just go around the track for 15 minutes one direction and then 15 minutes the other direction. And so my goal is like actually very, very simple now. It's just like, okay, can I just do 45 minutes of like general running? And I have all the workouts in my mind, but I really try to keep it. Oh, I try to stay away from that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's great though. I mean, it's one of the things I think a lot of coaches at the high school level try to push. Like, if you don't, if you're not going to do this in college, you're not going to do that, you're not going to be that, that's fine. But no, this is a way to keep yourself healthy, to keep yourself mentally
totally,
just happy, to just get out
totally,
and do a little bit.
totally. Yeah, and it's like it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing like it. Yeah, I don't know. And I think, being in Kenya, it was also very inspiring to see that too. Like there's just so much of that in their culture. People are always moving. They're always like, I remember just, I would love to go to school with little kids, and the little kids they would run, and then they would jump over a puddle and run under the fence and fight with their friends. And then they would, you know, and sometimes you're running there and there's a bunch of cows that block the road. So you have to run around the cows. it's just stuff like that, like, I think for me, it's finding it in that way now, like none of them ever think about running as a way of, um, they, in the beginning for a lot of Kenyans, it's just something that's so fun,
Right.
you know, and something that you grow up with in your childhood and you never think about. So that's kind of, I just want it to be very natural now.
Yeah.
Um, it also really helps when I need to like run to like an airplane or like to a train or to, because I use running actually more in that way now than anything else when I need to like, when I'm in a rush somewhere. So
Yeah. It does help to be able to know that you can get someplace quickly if you need to.
totally, yeah, I definitely take advantage of that all the time.
Oh, all right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Um, we know we have a little bit of a time constraint, so I want to
Yeah.
um, respect your time, but this has been a lot of fun, and I'm sure we can find a time to get you back on again at some point.
Oh, man, yeah.
And
Well, I love your podcast and I love what you're doing. And it's really nice to keep, just to show how amazing running is in New Mexico, and it's like we come from a mecca of running,
we
and
do.
I mean, just to have all the high school kids on and the professionals and, the coaches, and it's really nice to put that whole community of people together. And I feel really, really privileged to be here and to, have someone perhaps listen to me on the other end of it. And I just hope that something in my story and something in my words was able to touch someone. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, and um, yeah, I love to just always appreciate all the amazing journeys that people have, and so I
Yeah.
really am grateful that you do that, and it's
Well, thank you.
yeah, it's really awesome.
I appreciate that. And I do have one more question for you. And
Uh-huh.
that is just, I always like to end with music. So, what do you listen to when you're getting ready to either get out there and go for an easy run or maybe get yourself in the right motivation to, meet with your clients for the day?
Um, I always leave it up to my clients, actually. I always ask them what they like listening to. So sometimes it's death metal, sometimes it's jazz, sometimes it's weird techno music you never even imagine. Oh my gosh. Um, but actually for me, I love African music a lot. There's something about the positivity in it that I just really enjoy. So I don't usually listen to music when I run. I'm actually more of a podcast person, so
Nice.
um, I'd probably listen to your podcast. So that's what I would
Awesome.
when I go for a run. So that's really actually what I do is I'd probably listen to your podcast. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I go back and forth. I'll do some music sometimes and some podcasts, just depends on the mood I'm in.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
um,
I love Oliver Tuku something. I don't remember his name, but there's a song called um what's it called? I don't remember now. Sorry. So
no, no, that's all right. That's all right.
yeah.
Well, again, I really appreciate your time and thank you. And, is there anything else you'd like to say before I let you go?
Um, yeah, I think if anyone's ever interested in seeing me and working with me, my website's ajbeach.earth. And
I'll link that.
yeah, you're always welcome to just text or call or even if it's just to ask a question or if there's someone someplace in the world that you need help with, I probably know someone. So I have a lot of friends. So if anyone's ever interested, I'm happy to help. And usually I work on a sliding scale, so I'm always trying to lose money when I work. So yeah, so I'm always happy to be around. So yeah, thanks for having me.
I'd once again like to thank my guest for their time and thank you for tuning in. If you have the opportunity, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, or just help spread the word. Music was provided by Philip Friedman. You can follow him on SoundCloud at DJ Teach. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at RunningNM. Feel free to drop me a line or shoot me an email at runningnewmexico@gmail.com if you have any questions or know of someone who should be interviewed. In the meantime, keep running, New Mexico.